Hello there YouTube, and welcome along to Steve's Coronavirus Update episode 6. It's episode 6, I know, cannot believe it. It's been 6 weeks since I started this coronavirus update. Just before I do go into any detail about the coronavirus update though, I do want to talk two things with you. Firstly, I want to say about Xbox 2020. Now, this is a new thing that Microsoft are doing, and they're going to be doing it every month, hence why it's called Xbox 2020, because for every month, for the rest of this year, for the rest of 2020, they are going to be making some new announcements on Xbox Series X, Xbox Game Pass, and Project X Cloud. For those that don't know, Xbox Series X is a brand new gaming console, and it's the predecessor from the Xbox One and Xbox One X and Xbox One S, etc, etc, and it will be coming out at Christmas 2020. It is still on target, by the way, to be released Christmas 2020. So at the moment, but anyway, for the rest of this year, Microsoft will be making announcements about Xbox 2020, about Xbox Series X, Xbox Game Pass, and Project X Cloud, and I will be bringing you a Steve Let's Talk Xbox 2020 episode every month for the rest of this year. It starts from June. From the beginning of June, I'll be doing those videos. So at the start of every month, I'll be bringing you updates about Series X, Project X Cloud, and Game Pass as well. And I'll show you guys some gameplay as well while I talk. In fact, I can confirm this with you. The first Xbox 2020 event is going to be taking place tomorrow at 4 PM. Check it out on the Xbox social media sites, YouTube channel, etc, etc. They'll be streaming it live. They'll be showing some gameplay and some third-party gameplay from third-party games, third-party developers, etc, etc, and you'll be able to see how magnificent Series X is, etc, etc. So that's a little bit of an update I wanted to bring you on that. Second thing, I want to talk about these coronavirus updates, and I must say that I'm enjoying making these weekly videos every Wednesday on my YouTube channel, SteveOfficial. I can confirm that for the rest of this month I will be doing coronavirus updates, but I also can confirm to you guys as well that I will be continuing these coronavirus updates right up until the very end of June at the moment, okay? So that's what's going to be happening based on that. So anyway, now let's get cracking then with what I want to talk about this week, because I've got a lot coming up again, because coming up I am going to be revealing how a NHS track and trace app will work, and I'll give you some updates on that. I'm also going to give you an update on McDonald's as well, because McDonald's have announced some reopenings. I'll be telling you about that statement and all that and more coming up very soon. Also as well, I'm going to be talking about, there is something I wanted to talk about as well actually, which I'm going to talk about IKEA as well, because they're set to reopen soon, so I'll tell you what you need to know about that. I'll also be talking about what the UK post-lockdown workplaces might look like as well. I'll talk about Costa Coffee reopening as well, and I'll talk about how the UK might operate as well. So I'll talk about that and how that's going to work. So I'm going to start off this week with McDonald's. Now I'm going to tell you all there is to know about McDonald's. So I'm going to start with the statement that they had said within the last week. So I'm going to talk about that first. So it says, "Hi everyone. In March, we took the decision to temporarily close our restaurants in the UK and Ireland for the safety of our employees and customers. Recently, we began working through a potential and limited reopening, and I wanted to share with you an update that we shared with our franchises and 135,000 employees earlier today. As part of our reopening planning, we have been listening to you and our employees, and we have worked closely with UK and Irish governments and trade bodies to help ensure we do this responsibly. We have deliberately taken our time. We want to get this right. We sought the views of our employees as we worked through our reopening planning to give us all confidence in the measures we are introducing to keep them safe. We understand everyone has been affected to this global crisis differently, and therefore when it comes to returning to work, our people will be encouraged to make the right decision based on their personal circumstances. This week we have been running controlled tests to explore the safest way to reopen our restaurants, to give us all confidence in the new operational measures we are introducing to keep you and our employees safe. We asked our employees for their thoughts, have incorporated much of their feedback, and will continue to listen and learn. The tests have proven successful, and I will outline the ways in which we will slowly but safely begin to resume serving McDonald's customers again. On May 13th, we will reopen 15 of our restaurants in the UK. This will be a limited capacity with delivery only. The restaurants involved will be announced next week, and I can confirm those restaurants have been announced, and I will let you guys know which restaurants have been announced in a few moments. As we work through inviting our employees back to work and supporting our delivery partners to prepare for our gradual return. So the new safety measures in place. As you know, McDonald's already has high standards for cleanliness, and routine cleaning of our restaurants has always been in place. We will increase how often these procedures are completed and provide all employees with updated training on restaurant cleanliness and sanitisation. All restaurants will be deep cleaned before reopening. We will introduce the following measures to help keep our people safe. Perspex screens and floor markings will be introduced in specific areas. We will provide additional protective equipment, including non-medical grade face masks. All employees will be asked to confirm they are fit and able to work, and we will use contactless thermometers with temperature taken on arrival at work for every shift. We will also be introducing social distancing measures for all of our delivery and service partners. Limited menu and hours. We will return with much smaller teams in our restaurants, and as a result we will be returning with a limited menu. This will support social distancing in our kitchens while still providing many McDonald's iconic menu items. Full details of our limited menu can be found on our website, and I will give you the list of that full details on the limited menu in a few moments. To reduce the complexities in our kitchen at menu changeover, we will temporarily not be serving breakfast and open from 11 AM to 10 PM. As we reopen, we will explore the ways in which to help our employees safely change over menus, and we will reintroduce our breakfast menu as soon as we can. We are working with our delivery partners in Uber Eats and Just Eat to ensure the well-being of our delivery drivers as well as our employees. Perspex screens, sanitising stations and new social distancing procedures will be introduced as we continue the contact-free collections and drop-offs we closed with back in March. Serving the community. To date, we have distributed over 400 tonnes of food to charities and food banks around the UK and Ireland, and we will continue to support the communities in which we operate as we reopen. And finally, thank you. The last few weeks have been difficult for all of us, and I hope you, your friends and your families are staying safe. We are very grateful to those of you who have taken a moment to share messages and stay in touch. When we return, it will be different as we all adjust to this new normal. I want to apologise in advance if our first wave of reopened restaurants does not serve your area. Rest assured, we are working hard to reopen more restaurants, but I am adamant this must be at the right pace with the well-being of our employees, suppliers and customers front of mind. Thank you for your patience. Slowly but safely we will return to towns and cities across the UK and Ireland, and thank you for your continued support as we work through this crisis. We will continue to keep you updated via email, our website and our social media channels. In the meantime, stay safe and we will see you soon. Best regards, Paul Pomeroy, who is the Chief Executive Officer of McDonald's UK and Ireland. So that is the statement that he released within this last week. So let's take a look then and see which of those 15 restaurants will be open and will be serving McDonald's from 11 AM to 10 PM. So the following restaurants will be serving local customers by McDelivery only from 11 AM on the 13th of May. Rest assured, we are working hard to reopen more restaurants and we will keep you updated here as we add more. So, we've got Chelmsford Riverside, Chelmsford Westway, Ipswich Cardinal Park, Boreham Interchange, Luton Leagrave, Watford Hertfordshire Arms, Chawle End Lane, Luton, Beechings Way, Gillingham, Sittingbourne Retail Park, Gillingham Bowwaters, Tooting, Dalston, Welling, I believe that is, Welling, Harrow and Luton George Street. Those are the 15 restaurants that will be reopening from the 13th of May. Slowly but safely we will return to towns and cities across the UK and Ireland, and thank you for your continued support as we work through this crisis. So there we go. That is the 15 restaurants that are going to be reopening from the 13th of May. Obviously, if you live local like me, I live in the south of the UK, the south coast of the UK, I'm not going to be getting McDonald's for a little while longer, which is so annoying. So annoying. Anyway, okay, let's take a look though at, because at the end of the day, I'm still going to mention this. I'm still going to mention about this because either way, when those restaurants do reopen locally to you who are watching this, or to me, this is exactly going to be the limited menu that McDonald's will have when they do eventually reopen other restaurants in the UK. Obviously they're going to continue opening from 11 AM till 10 PM, and obviously the breakfast menu isn't going to be reintroduced for quite some time. I think at the moment they're focusing on getting as many restaurants in the UK reopened as, you know, as possible. But obviously this, even when they do reopen locally to me or to anyone else watching this, then this is the limited menu that they're going to have when they do reopen. So let's take a look then. So this is the main menu. So from the main menu, you will be able to order cheeseburger, hamburger, double cheeseburger, a Big Mac, quarter pounder with cheese, McChicken sandwich, fillet of fish, chicken McNuggets, chicken selects. So that's the main menu. Here's the sides and desserts. So sides, you get fries, mozzarella dippers, and the desserts you get core McFlurry. So that's Oreo, Maltesers, Smarties, and you also get fruit bag as well. Here's the drinks that you'll be able to order from McDonald's when they do eventually reopen. So you'll get Coke, Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Fanta, Sprite, Oasis, black coffee, white coffee, latte, cappuccino, espresso, flat white, tea, orange juice, fruit shoot, water, and Happy Meal water as well. And the Happy Meal variants, because obviously they will still serve for people who have kids. So this is the variants you'll get with the Happy Meal. So you get Happy Meal hamburger, Happy Meal cheeseburger, and finally Happy Meal 4 nuggets. So there we are. That is everything that I can bring you up to date on in terms of McDonald's reopening restaurants. Of course, when they do reopen more restaurants here in the UK and other parts of the UK as well, like in Ireland and stuff like that, then I will bring you up to date on that as soon as we get it, and of course as soon as the next coronavirus update video is available. So, I'm now going to move on to another store that's reopened, and that's IKEA. Because IKEA are set to reopen soon in the UK. So, let's have a look at, let's just take a look at what you need to know about IKEA. So, first of all, when did IKEA close? Well, the Swedish flat pack chain shut the doors at all its 22 stores in the UK and Ireland back on Friday, March 20th. This was just before the UK entered official lockdown. So did they stop the online orders? No, shoppers have still been able to buy products online at ikea.co.uk and have them delivered to their homes. The chain has also offered customers the opportunity to request contact-free deliveries as well. So what have IKEA said? So no formal update has been released from IKEA as to when they will reopen. In a statement in March, Peter Jelkaby, IKEA's chief sustainability officer, had said there are extraordinary times and our absolute priority is to ensure the health and safety of our customers and co-workers. We have listened carefully to them, to the advice of the UK and Ireland governments, and have been closely monitoring the situation as this evolves. This is the right decision for us to take at this point. We look forward to welcoming our customers back to our stores in the future. As a company who cares deeply about people and the planet, our thoughts are with all those affected by the virus and those working tirelessly to care for them. So when are they likely to reopen? According to reports, IKEA have proposed to reopen on Monday, May 18th for its 18 stores based in the UK, although that has yet to be confirmed by the company. So obviously, where does IKEA have stores in the UK? You're probably wondering. Well, the chain have stores in the following locations, plus 3 order and collection points. So Norwich has an order and collection point. Croydon, Greenwich, Lakeside, Tottenham, Wembley, Westfield Station, Stratford City, which is an order and collection point. Midlands, Birmingham, Coventry, Nottingham, Belfast, Manchester, Warrington, Aberdeen, which is an order and collection point. And then you've got Edinburgh, Gateshead, Glasgow, Leeds, Sheffield, Milton Keynes, Reading, Southampton, Bristol, Cardiff, Exeter, and that's pretty much it. So there we go. So it has been reported at the moment that they're set to reopen 18 stores in the UK, but that's obviously not yet been confirmed. So as soon as we get confirmation on that, then of course we will let you know about that. Now I'm going to talk another thing that's set to reopen. In fact, they are reopened now. Costa Coffee is reopening 29 branches for deliveries and drive-thrus, and that has already begun because it started on the 2nd of May, so this past weekend. The chain temporarily closed all of its 200 plus UK stores on the 23rd of March due to coronavirus lockdown measures, but opened 2 branches for delivery and 2 for drive-through last week. Now the popular coffee outlet has opened 29 further branches, some of which are available for drive-through orders and some of which are available for delivery orders on Uber Eats. So let's take a look at some of those. Well, let's take a look. So the drive-through stores open are Bedell-Widden drive-through, I hope I've said that right, Croydon drive-through, Edinburgh Sharpdale drive-through, Enterprise Swansea drive-through, Farringdon drive-through, Glasgow Braehead drive-through, Harwich drive-through, Ipswich drive-through, Manchester White City drive-through, Mansfield Sutton Road drive-through, Norwich drive-through, Poole drive-through, Sittingbourne drive-through, St Ives drive-through, Stowmarket drive-through, Toddington North drive-through, Toddington South drive-through, Wakefield Snow Hill drive-through, Watford Archers Retail Park drive-through. And then below here now is the stores that are open for delivery only via Uber Eats. So Avon Meads Retail Park, Birmingham Navigation Street, Edinburgh South Bridge, Leeds Crown Point, Leicester St George's Retail Park, Manchester Oxford Road, Newcastle Gallowgate Wellbar, Peckham, Peterborough Brotherhood Retail Park, Plymouth New George, Richmond, Romford Pavilion Retail Park, Tooley Street and Whitechapel. So those are the 29 drive-throughs and delivery only stations that you guys will be able to order Costa coffee from. So obviously more stores will, well, more coffee stations for Costa will be reopened in the near future, of course. Again, they're reopening gradually, and of course I will bring you up to date as to what drive-throughs and delivery only Costas will be opening in the future on my coronavirus update. I just also want to say very quickly that all 288 B&Q UK stores have reopened within the last week as well. So if you're stuck in the house, if you're bored, if you've got nothing to do, want to do some DIY, you know, then B&Q are reopen for you to buy all sorts. I'm not sure what they are allowing customers to buy, because obviously I'm not someone that goes into B&Q much, but obviously they probably might have a select amount of stuff for you guys to buy when you go in store. So there we go. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the NHS contact tracing app. We're going to take a look at how it's going to work, because at the moment, don't ask why, I don't even know why specifically, but in the Isle of Wight, the public and NHS workers are being advised to download the trial app, because they are trialling the contact tracing NHS app in the Isle of Wight at the moment. It is set to be rolled out across the UK between mid-May and the end of May. And I'm gonna tell you now how that tracing app is going to work, just so that you guys are aware of how it works, and just so that you know, really, in terms of, you know, when it does eventually come to me and you guys watching this, how it's going to work, and obviously how you'll be able to trace it and stuff like that. So it is expected to be trialled and tested on the Isle of Wight, but obviously it is expected to be rolled out nationwide in the next few weeks. So let's take a look then and see. I'm just trying to see very quick how. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read this to you very quick. Okay, so the trial of contact tracing app used to track COVID-19 infections will begin from now on the Isle of Wight. NHS and council staff are being urged to download the smartphone app, with the rest of the island's population invited to follow from Thursday. So from tomorrow, the public who live in the Isle of Wight will be also able to download the NHS contact tracing app. The app is expected to be rolled out nationwide in the next few weeks. As revealed by Sky News in March, the app uses Bluetooth to detect nearby phones, showing who the owner of the phone has been near. This will mean Isle of Wight residents can get a warning if one of their contacts contracts COVID-19, and be able to warn any of their contacts if they are infected with the virus. Restrictions on movement will not be eased on the Isle of Wight during this test, but officials believe the app can play an important part in lifting the lockdown, alongside other measures including testing and manual contact tracing. The app is exciting, said Matthew Gould, Chief Executive of NHSX, the NHS innovation unit behind the app, but it's not a single solution of magic bullet. It's part of this wider strategy. Although the existence of the app has been known for over a month, this is the first time details of how it will work have been confirmed, although officials stress these are still provisional at this stage. So Isle of Wight residents who download the app will be asked to turn on Bluetooth and allow notifications and enter the first half of their postcode. They will then be prompted with a question: how are you feeling today? Anyone who believes they may have caught COVID-19 can run through a short checklist which asks whether they have a fever or a continuous cough. If your symptoms indicate you may have coronavirus, you will be given a reference number and told to call in for a test. If you report symptoms, you will be prompted to upload a list of the anonymised IDs your phone has collected to the NHS system, which will then use a risk scoring algorithm to decide who you have been near is potentially at risk. This takes into account the duration of the contact and the strength of the signal during the contact in order to assess the risk posed, meaning that it won't force every person who someone has walked by into quarantine. Variations in the Bluetooth signal can also be used to determine if two phones are detecting each other through a wall. Officials said, as the radio waves will be received differently if the wall has nails or foil insulation. In response to questions about privacy, Mr. Gould emphasised that the app was voluntary to download and promised that NHSX would publish both the source code and the data protection arrangements underlying the app. However, experts raised concerns about the government's decision to choose a centralised system which asks users to upload their contacts to a central system rather than a decentralised model which needs less information. Apple and Google, who are working together on a contact tracing system, plan to use a decentralised model which the UK data watchdog has praised for most easily allowing best practice compliance with data protection regulations. The two tech giants have announced that they will be providing further resources to accelerate what they call the exposure notification app ahead of a planned launch of an initial system in mid-May. Asked why they had chosen to build their own system rather than relying on the operating systems on nearly all of the world's smartphones, officials acknowledged that the app was still a work in progress. However, they said with a centralised system they would not be able to rely on self-reporting of systems, instead having to wait for official tests which take time to arrive at a moment when anyone infected is very contagious. We're working across a large range of countries and only the UK is intending to trigger risks based on self-reporting, said Michael Veal, an academic who is working in a decentralised contact tracing project for Apple and Google, who have borrowed from. The UK seems to believe they can compensate for the lack of ability to rapidly test people with self-reporting and mitigate the risks of intentional and unintentional false alarms with unspecified fraud analysis. From my perspective, I think such analysis might have a chance of stopping large-scale clumsy attacks, but will not be able to mitigate the broader risks from self-reporting. Another question that remains to be answered is how people who do not have smartphones, such as young children and elderly people, will be able to use the system. Mr. Gould said NHSX did not want to accidentally exacerbate the digital divide, and government scientists suggesting that manual contact tracing could be used to supplement the technology. In a briefing call with journalists, Deputy Chief Medical Officer Jonathan Van Tam stressed that it absolutely never will be the case that children are excluded from contact tracing. Health Secretary Matt Hancock said of trialling the app on the Isle of Wight from Thursday, each one of the 80,000 households on the island will get a letter from the chief nurse with comprehensive information about the trial. islanders will then be able to install the app. He told them, by downloading the app, you are protecting your own health, you are protecting the health of your loved ones and the health of your community. I know that the people of the Isle of Wight will embrace this with enthusiasm, because by embarking on this project and by embracing test, track and trace, you will be saving lives. But he stressed the trial of the app did not mean the end of social distancing measures. Mr. Hancock has promised to hire 18,000 contact tracers in the next few weeks, although public health experts have questioned whether this number is large enough with technical help. So there we go. So that's all you need to know about the coronavirus NHS contact tracing app that's going to be rolled out on the Isle of Wight here in the UK by the end of this week. Of course, that will be going out to 80,000 households, and of course it will be rolled out nationwide here in the UK by mid-May, going towards the end of May. And of course I'll let you guys know as to when that contact tracing app will be available for the rest of the UK to download at a later date. So I've got two more, in fact I've got three more things to talk about during this coronavirus update. I'm going to be talking about what the UK's post-lockdown workplace will look like after lockdown has been eased, and I'm also going to be talking about how the UK might operate under post-lockdown. And I'm also going to be giving you an update on Boris Johnson as well, because at the time of recording this, he has announced a few things that I'd like to give my opinions on, to be honest. So I'm going to start with what will the UK's post-lockdown workplaces look like. So, as the UK's coronavirus cases begin to stabilise, calls for an end to the nation's strict lockdown rules continue to grow. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to reveal a roadmap on Sunday this week, detailing exactly how restrictions will be eased in order for Britons to safely return to work, amongst other things. But the government has also stressed that the nation's battle with coronavirus will continue after lockdown measures are eased. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Michael Gove, has said Britons will need to live with some degree of constraint until a vaccination becomes available. Ultimately, unless and until we have a vaccine, then I suspect that we are going to have to live with some degree of constraint because of the nature of the virus, he said. But we obviously want to, wherever possible and consistent with the measures on public health, restore people's lives to as close to normal as possible. Draft documents from the Deputy of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS, seen by the BBC and the Financial Times, set out a number of measures which businesses may have to implement. Under the plans, millions of companies will have to draw up a COVID-19 risk assessment before allowing staff to return to work. The document suggests the guidance also says social distancing will have to be maintained whether on the shop floor, in shopping queues or in communal spaces. So what could the world of work look like while social distancing is still enforced? So let's take a look at offices first. So since the lockdown conditions were first imposed on March 23rd, most of the nation's office workers have become accustomed to working from home. However, companies that are eager for workers to return to the office will need to make a number of changes in order to ensure the health and safety of staff is not compromised. The draft documents are reported to suggest staggered shift times, less sharing of equipment and continued maximisation of home working are among a number of ideas listed as part of a draft government strategy to help businesses prepare for a return to work. Increased hygiene procedures and the installation of protective screens in offices are also included in the plan. The Financial Times reported that firms will also be told to lay on more parking spaces so that staff do not have to rely on lifts from colleagues. Meanwhile, The Guardian says ministers are holding talks with technology firms over the creation of health passports, which use coronavirus testing and facial recognition to prove which workers have had COVID-19 already and are thought to be immune to it. So let's take a look at shops. So last month, the British retailer consortium, BRC, published guidance for measures shops could introduce to help with the transition once restrictions are lifted. The recommended measures include limiting entry and exit points, using floor markings to outline social distancing, and keeping changing rooms closed. The guidance also suggests installing cleaning stations with hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes at the front of stores. BRC chief Helen Dickinson said the guidance measures would serve to ensure the safety and well-being of both customers and staff. Since the lockdown, many retailers have proved how shops can run safely and effectively in line with the government's social distancing advice, she said. Continued close collaboration with government, including public support for the steps retailers are taking and adequate notice to get supply chains up and running, will mean that retail businesses can start trading again slowly and safely, and customers can feel confident that they are safe to return to shops. Public transport. Public transport is one of the biggest issues for many people as they prepare to return to the office. Speaking to ITV News, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said one option the government is considering is asking companies to stagger employees' start and finish times. He said that the public needs to protect ourselves and fellow commuters by not all travelling at the same time, the peak hours. When public transport becomes quite crowded, we cannot have that situation and keep sufficient social distancing, so we'll be asking companies and organisations to stagger work times. He added that for the meantime, many others who can work from home should continue to do so. We've been looking at a range of different things on public transport to ensure that is safe when that time comes, Mr Shapps added. Speaking on BBC One's The Andrew Marsh Show, Mr Shapps added increased bus and train timetables would be implemented to help the public transport system cope with an influx in passengers while still adhering to social distancing recommendations. The first thing is, obviously, we'll expand the number of trains and buses running, Mr Shapps said. He also pointed to active transport methods such as cycling as a way for people to take more personal responsibility over their welfare. The second thing to say is active travel, I think, is a very important part of this, by which I mean cycling, walking and so on, he said. There's been a massive increase, hundreds of percent more people using the existing scheme where you can go to your employer and ask for a bike which you pay back through the loan and effectively before you pay tax, and that's a very popular scheme, and I think active transport, active mobility is something we've been doing a lot more of. So let's take a look at airports. Heathrow Chief Executive John Holland Kay has warned that the nation's major international airports do not have enough space for social distancing to be a solution for safe travel and business trips post-lockdown. Forget social distancing, it won't work in aviation or any other form of public transport, and the problem is not the plane, it is the lack of space in the airport, he wrote in the Daily Telegraph. Just one jumbo jet would require a queue a kilometre long. Instead, Mr Holland Kay believes mandatory health checks for passengers, increased levels of hygiene and compulsory face masks would be more realistic options to enable airports to reopen and air travel to resume. So, what about if people have jobs where a 2-metre distance cannot be easily enforced? Speaking on Monday, Cabinet Minister Ben Wallace said a range of methods, including the use of personal protective equipment, PPE, and shields could allow people to be less than 2 metres apart for periods. Mr Wallace said the government would do as much as we can to set out as much detail on the guidance and remove doubt. He added there will be interpretations and there will no doubt be exceptions, but if there are exceptions to things like social distancing and the 2-metre rule, then what alternative can you use? The Tory MP gave the example of shields being used to protect cashiers in supermarkets when a distance of 2 metres cannot be enforced. Mr Wallace added PPE could also be used if people come into contact with others. However, business leaders have said clarity is needed on issues such as PPE and whether firms can be held liable, such as PPE, and whether firms, so whether firms can be held liable even if they fulfill their obligations to protect employees from coronavirus. So, what have businesses said? So, Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce, which represents 75,000 companies across the UK, Adam Marshall, said the issue of PPE and social distancing is one of the key questions that we have asked. He told BBC Radio 4's Today programme, we need as much specificity as possible so businesses can ensure they've taken all the steps they can in order to protect their people, and as much as possible we want to see consistency across the UK. It would be very confusing and costly for businesses if we saw different nations going in very different directions. The bosses, will want to know that they're not going to be held liable for horrible things that may unfortunately happen if they've done everything in their power to keep their people safe. Whereas, by contrast, we want to see those employees who didn't take adequate steps face the consequences of that. So the question of legal liability is extremely important. Mr. Marshall said there is a need for clear guidance on PPE. We're still waiting for more detail on that, and it's going to be hugely important for a lot of firms because the number of questions we're hearing from businesses about protective equipment grows by the day, he told Today. A UK-wide procurement strategy will be hugely important in order to source and manufacture the necessary PPE, he added. So what have transport providers said? Well, rail union leaders have voiced severe concerns over any moves to increase train services as part of the expected easing of the lockdown. The three main rail unions have written to Prime Minister Boris Johnson warning that increasing services would send out a mixed message that it is okay to travel by train despite official advice suggesting otherwise. The mixed messaging could be dangerous and lead to the public flouting the rules on travel and work, said Aslef, the RMT and TSSA. The letter continues, we will not accept new working patterns that put the lives of railway workers and passengers at risk. To be clear, we are not convinced that there is any basis at this time for a safe escalation of services. So there we go. Anyway, that is all that I'm going to mention about what the UK's post lockdown workplaces will look like when we do come out of this. So I'm now going to reveal how the UK might operate once lockdown is eased. So I'm going to talk about that because Boris Johnson has declared the lockdown must stay in place and that he cannot spell out how fast or slow when changes will be made. That's within the last week. Mr. Johnson said modifications would be announced in due course with the maximum possible transparency, while Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has said people will have to get used to a new normal due to coronavirus, with social distancing measures set to remain in place for some time. But what might that new normal look like? Well, let's take a look at that new normal. So we're going to start with factories. So car makers including Jaguar, Land Rover, Aston Martin and Nissan have announced a gradual resumption of production at plants, which will also require physical distancing rules in place. In Germany, Volkswagen has announced production capacity in its Wolfsburg plant will be around 10 to 15% to begin with and reach around 40% of pre-crisis levels after a week. The car maker has overhauled its procedures to include extra hygiene measures. Workers have been told to measure their temperature and to get changed into their overalls at home to prevent crowding in factory changing rooms. Extra markings have been put on the factory floor so that workers are better able to adhere to a 1.5 metre social distancing rule. It is likely to remain 2 metres in the UK, and staff have been given extra time to disinfect their tools and surfaces. Restaurants, cafes and pubs. So redesigned dining rooms, kitchens and beer gardens may be the way out of the lockdown for pubs, cafes and restaurants too, provided they can guarantee customers and staff stick to the 2-metre social distancing rule. Countries including Austria, Italy have announced the reopening of establishments from May and June respectively. So let's take a look at schools. Limits could be put on class sizes as suggested by the Scottish Government last week when it set out how it will approach plans to ease the lockdown. Classrooms may have to be redesigned to allow social distancing, so maybe not all children can go back to and be at school at the same time, said Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Do we have to take classes and divide them into two, where half of the class is there one week and the other half another week? She said, or one half in the morning and the other half in the afternoon. Similar guidelines, spacing between desks, breaks at different times, facilities for washing hands, and adequate supplies of disinfectant have also been drawn up by officials in Germany for a gradual reopening of schools from the 4th of May. Some states have already reopened schools, according to German media reports. Such modifications have already been applied in Denmark, where children in certain year groups have been returned to nurseries and schools, while other students must continue to study from home. Mr. Raab has said it is inconceivable schools could reopen without further measures in place to stop the spread of the disease. Ms. Sturgeon has warned she could delay any lifting of the restrictions in Scotland if she thought the government at Westminster was moving too quickly. Meeting relatives. The first non-journalist to ask a question at the government's daily coronavirus briefings was a grandmother wanting to know if she would be allowed to hug her family when the lockdown is relaxed. Lynn from Skipton in North Yorkshire said, "I'm missing my grandchildren so much. Please can you let me know if, after the 5 criteria are met, is being able to hug our closest family one of the first steps out of lockdown." Answering the question, Chief Medical Officer for England, Professor Chris Whitty, said older and vulnerable people may continue to have to be shielded from the virus, suggesting some reunions may be possible at some point. Professor Whitty said it will depend on whether the woman has a significant medical problem in a way that means she has to be shielding and she's an older person. He said if she's in a group that's vulnerable, then the answer is it might well be prudent, and this will depend entirely on individual circumstances for her not to get into a situation where she's putting herself at risk. Professor Whitty said it was accepted that families wanting to get together, but added it is important that people who are vulnerable continue to be protected even after whatever the next steps are. Hair and beauty. So some countries like Switzerland and Denmark have allowed hair and beauty salons and tattoo parlours to resume business, but while taking all possible precautions such as wearing a face mask and gloves during treatments. Swiss authorities say firms must provide individual clients an average of at least 10 square metres in their shops and offices, set up queues outside their buildings and regularly clean their equipment and surfaces. Hairdressers, barbers and masseurs who come within 2 metres of customers have been advised to wear masks and transparent plastic face shields and wash or disinfect their hands before and after each client. Some similar procedures were already in place at British salons when the pandemic hit UK soil, with hand sanitizers made available, hand towels replaced with disposable ones, magazines removed from waiting areas and all gowns, towels, styling stations, hairdressing tools, chairs, tills, door handles and handrails deep cleaned after every use. Thorough cleaning and shift work were key to reopening. Denmark's business minister Simon Kollerup said, adding, "It goes without saying that you cannot avoid contact with a masseur or hairdresser, but the new guidelines need to reduce our infection." Dentists, opticians, vets and GP surgeries. Similar social distancing and hygiene measures are likely to be applied by opticians, vets, dental centres and GP surgeries, which have already changed the way they operate. Veterinary practices are operating a closed door policy and have measures in place to make sure animals can be handed over safely without contact. Chains such as Vision Express, Boots and Specsavers are currently only offering essential eye care. Urgent dental hubs, UDCs, have been set up for emergency, and most GPs are now only conducting appointments with patients over the phone or holding video consultations. An easing of lockdown may not necessarily lead to a surge in face-to-face appointments. Some people may continue to receive remote care once restrictions are lifted because of the technological advances that have been made during the pandemic. Let's take a look now at construction. Some firms and house builders have started to reopen sites or have announced when operations will resume in May. Among them is Taylor Wimpey, which has said it is using detailed new site operating protocols developed in compliance with strict social distancing requirements. Chief Executive Pete Redfern said last week, "We are now confident that we have clear plans and processes in place so we can safely start back on site in a phased way." However, construction union Unite has called for the Health and Safety Executive to ramp up site visits to police social distancing on sites. New guidance from the Construction Leadership Council states that where workers are required to work within 2 meters of each other, they should work side by side or facing away from each other rather than face to face. When this is impossible, workers should keep this to 15 minutes or less where possible. Unite has written to Business Secretary Alok Sharma claiming procedures have been watered down compared with previous versions, and saying this undermines the safety of workers on construction sites and may even become a contributory factor to the spread of COVID-19 in our communities. Let's just take a look at flights. There is so many here, to be honest. In fact, there's 3 more, I believe. 4 more. There's 4 more to go through. So let's take a look at flights. EasyJet has said it plans to keep middle seats on its planes empty to maintain social distancing when flying resumes. The low-cost carrier is mulling plans on how it will return to service after this lockdown, which is currently costing it up to £40 million a week. Its aircraft, currently all grounded, are mostly configured with 3 seats in a row either side of the aisle. The proposed change would see passengers in window and aisle seats having an empty seat next to them. However, the boss of rival budget airline Ryanair has said that if such a move should become a condition for airlines to resume business, it should be paid for by government. Michael O'Leary said he expects his airline to be flying around 40% of its services by late June or early July. International travel, Mr. Raab has said officials are also looking at possible sea and airport checks, with passengers arriving in the UK required to quarantine for 14 days. This would apply to foreign tourists and UK citizens. It is believed that it could form part of the government's test, track and trace policy to isolate new cases of the disease, further curbing its spread as the numbers come down. Sport and football matches could be allowed to continue but without fans. The Premier League is holding further talks this week as it targets a return behind closed doors in June. All 20 clubs are expected to take part in a conference call on Friday. Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden said, "I personally have been in talks with the Premier League with a view to getting football up and running as soon as possible in order to support the whole football community. But of course, any such moves would have to be consistent with public health guidance." Recycling centres. Tips around the country are starting to reopen after some councils noted an increase in fly tipping during the lockdown. Merseyside Recycling and Waste Authority said on its website that its recycling centres will open in May with strict guidance in place. Only cars will be permitted on site, and users have been warned queuing times will be significantly higher. Just 1 person per vehicle, with the exception of blue badge holders, will be allowed, and social distancing rules of at least 2 meters will apply. Staff will not be able to assist with unloading. If households have had COVID-19 symptoms, then waste should be left for at least 72 hours before disposal, and personal waste should be safely double bagged, WRWA have said. So, that is what a post-UK lockdown could look like. Now, finally, I've just got 2 more things to share with you. First of all, Boris Johnson, obviously, let's go back to April, sorry. At the beginning of April, Boris Johnson promised that we would have up to 250,000 tests a day done here in the UK. Well, it was then later revealed that Matt Hancock actually wanted to lower that down, that expectation down to 100,000 tests per day. I can confirm, by the way, that now that we're in the beginning of May, at the time recording this, that technically that expectation did get met, yes, but it wasn't the people that were being the amount of people that were being tested, it was the amount of tests that were being carried out. So it wasn't, I believe the people must have been around about 73,000, maybe 83,000, around about there. So, you know, so them saying that they want to test 100,000 people by the end of last month, well, that didn't come true, did it? It was just the tests that were carried out. So there we go. Yeah, so Boris Johnson has now said that he wants to carry out a further 100,000 tests per day by the end of this month, by the end of May. He wants to reach the target of 200,000 tests being done per day. So whether or not that requirement will be met or not will be later seen. And of course I will let you know at the end of this month in one of my coronavirus updates as to whether or not that target had been met. So that's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to talk about is Boris Johnson. Obviously every Wednesday they normally hold PMQs here in the UK, which is a Prime Minister question session, which normally involves Boris Johnson answering some of the questions that are being talked about in Parliament, etc, etc. Well, anyway, obviously there has been talk now about lockdown here in the UK being eased just a tiny bit, just a little tiny bit. Now Boris Johnson has said that he is going to reveal on Sunday this week his plans as to how lockdown will be eased. And I will reveal what those lockdown plans are in my next coronavirus update on my YouTube channel, which you guys can expect to see at the time of recording this next Wednesday, which I believe will be the 13th of May. So the 13th of May is when you'll next be able to see my coronavirus update. And I will reveal those exit strategy plans to you guys as they are announced by Boris Johnson. But he has said today that some of those lockdown measures may be eased as early as Monday next week. So it's going to be the case of some of those lockdown measures are going to be eased gradually, but some of those lockdown measures are going to be eased straight away from the next day. So that's the latest that I can bring you on that. So there we go. So yeah, so that's what Boris has said, that some of those restrictions will be lifted on Monday, as early as Monday, and obviously the rest of the restrictions will be lifted gradually, of course. What those restrictions being lifted are is yet to be seen, yet to be announced in terms of being lifted. So we will just have to wait and see. Personally, to be honest with you, I'm not going to lie, but I'm just going to show you this. You know, right now I am binging Family Guy from seasons 1 to 19. So personally, to be honest, if any of those restrictions are being lifted, to be honest, I'm more than happy just to sit here, continue watching Family Guy, and then watch like the classic Doctor Who box set from seasons 1 to season 26, and then watch Fuller House, well, Full House from seasons 1 to 8, and then Fuller House from seasons 1 to 5, and then Two Broke Girls on Prime Video from seasons 1 to 6, I believe it is, and Futurama from seasons 1 to 10, and then Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on Netflix from seasons 1 to 6, and then I'm going to watch season 1 of The Boys, and then I've got season 1 to 10 of Friends that I'm going to watch on Netflix as well. So to be honest, there is a lot of box sets that I'm going to be binging over the next couple of weeks that I'm more than happy not to go outside and meet anyone and do anything with anyone, because I'm more than happy just to sit up here, stay safe, saving my life, and I'm saving other people's lives as well. You never know, I could be a carrier for all you know. You never know. So I am just going to be sitting up here watching TV and continue to watch TV probably until the beginning of July, pretty much. That's when I really want to lift my own lockdown restrictions, as I'm calling it. You know, where I'm not going out apart from going to work. I'm saving a lot of money doing it this way as well, you know, and so on and so on. So there we go. So if you're wanting to meet up with me, anyone watching this, then start booking dates in July, because that's probably when I'm going to start leaving my house, and maybe, just maybe, weekly vlogging. So that's a little bit of an exclusive for you, but I'll let you guys know in the near future what's going to happen and what's going on with that. So anyway, that is pretty much all that I've got time for. I do apologise, this was a really long coronavirus update video for you today, but I had so much to cram in, and so much has happened in the space of the week, obviously with businesses reopening, and obviously I wanted to tell you guys about the NHS contact tracing app, and I wanted to kind of tell you guys what UK workplaces and what the UK might look like once we've come out of lockdown as well. So there's that as well. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you did enjoy this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well. Your next video is coming out on SteveOfficial on Friday the 8th of May this week, and that's going to be my Star Wars Day video. So from me, it's goodbye, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.